Hi, I'm Opal Mitchell. I work for the Central Arkansas Library System, and I work at the Nixon branch in Jacksonville. And this is the Crafting with Opal program that I do on Thursday nights at 7. And tonight I'm going to show you how to sew a hot pad. If you've never made one before, it's pretty easy. This is a pretty simple one, and it teaches you how to work with bias tape a little bit. So if you've never worked with bias tapes, this will be a nice little practice with that for a small project to be using bias tape on. And I'm going to do a quick comment to see if the comments have not been working real great on here when I've been doing programs. I don't know why. So I do a little test hi comment just to see if things are working right. Okay, it appeared on my screen, so hopefully if you decide to ask any questions while I'm doing the program, hopefully they'll pop up in the comments for me. I usually try to keep a lookout for any comments that people will be making while I'm doing the project, so if you do have a question or you didn't catch something I did and you wanted to see it again, you could ask me to try, do that again, or ask me about it. So feel free to make any comments if you need to, if you've got any questions. I do give out free supplies for the program, this program that I do on Thursday nights. A lot of times it's sewing. Sometimes we'll do other projects. We've done knitting and crocheting in the past, and we do some paint-alongs too. And with the paint-alongs, we give all the supplies out for that, the paintbrushes and everything. So if you're interested in doing some paint-alongs, we'll be doing one of those towards the end of this month. I think it's the last Thursday. Alright, so I'm going to switch the camera around and show you what we're going to be working on. Alright, and here's some of the supplies. Let's see if I can keep this from tipping over. I'm going to turn this just a little bit to see if this will behave a little bit better. Alright, that's just something I'm going to be cutting in a moment. But this is the project. It's just a simple hot pad, and you just use two pieces of some fabric for the back, fabric for the front. You could use the same color if you want to, it doesn't matter. And then we also have some insulation that we're going to be putting on the inside of it to keep from, burning yourself whenever you're using it to take things out of the oven. Unfortunately with this one, I only used one piece of the insulation. It's recommended to use two of them, and unfortunately tonight I only have one piece of this insulation, so even folding it won't work because that'll be too small. So I'm going to be using one piece, but I recommend that you use two pieces of this instead of one when you make a hot pad. This might still be okay for things you just got out of the oven, like maybe a cookie sheet or something, to lay it on top of it while on your countertop. But as far as grabbing something that's hot, I wouldn't recommend using just one piece of this insulation, because you might still get burned, even though it's supposed to help with that. Just to be on the safe side, you would use two pieces. Alright, and this is just my little example that I did. The directions I copied from the internet, they did their measurements a little bit different than me. Theirs is a little bit bigger, so depending on what size hot pad you want, you can definitely cater this to whatever size hot pad you want. So you would just change the measurements according to what size hot pad you want to have. I changed it to 7 inches wide to 9 inches long. The people that wrote this, they did 8.5 inches wide by 11 inches long. So that's a little bit bigger. So if you prefer a little bit bigger hot pad, then go right ahead and do that. So once you figure out what size you want your hot pad to be, you're going to be cutting out two pieces of this. It's called Insul, the brand of this type of insulation. Oh, my puppy dog is making noises. Are you okay, Lucy? Okay. It's called Insulbright is the brand of insulation. So there's other ones, but that's the brand that I've got. And you can find that usually in craft stores like Hobby Lobby or well, I don't know if I've seen them at Michael's, but Joann probably, I bet they would probably carry some of this also. But like I said, don't use just one piece, double it up and use 2 pieces. Tonight I'm only going to be cutting 1 out because I just don't have enough to cut 2. So just ignore that. Oh, hey Missy, how are you doing? And so I'm going to be cutting this out to the size that I want, which is 7 inches wide and 9 inches long. So let's see, I think my bottom edge is pretty straight already. I'm going to cut it first. I'm going to move my directions out of the way. So I'm trying to get this all lined up where you can see it. Alright, so I have a good straight bottom edge, so I'm going to kind of go with that. And I want it 9 inches long, so my 9 inches mark is up at the top here, so I'm going just a little past that to cut. This is actually only 6 inches wide, this piece of ruler that I have. So I also have measurements on my board here, so I'm going to use it to measure out 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm lining this up with my line down here and my line up here. You probably can't see the top of this. Okay, so there's that piece. I didn't cut this one all the way off, so I'm going to line this up on here and make sure that I've got this lined up too. Both of these lines are lined up, and that should be my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that'll be 9 inches across. Make sure I got it all the way across here. A little bigger is always better, just in case you don't quite cut it out right. I am not left-handed, so this is holding on to it that way is kind of hard for me. Okay, so now I've got this piece that's measuring 7 by 9. So I've got that. And like I said, if you're making one, be sure to cut out 2 of those out of that Insulbright. And then I'm also going to cut the same size out of this red fabric, and then I also have a print that I'm also going to be cutting it out at. And so I'm just going to kind of lay this down here because it's already measured out to what sizes I want. And I'm just going to use this to get my straight edges and make sure that it's measured correctly. I may be getting a little bit of my insulation on there, but not a big deal. Alright. That way I don't have to, I can make sure that everything is measuring the same. So I'm going to cut that off too. I might have to turn this because it's kind of getting awkward for me as far as cutting. And if you don't have a rotary cutter and the mat, then is just what you would do is you would do the same thing I'm doing, except you would take a water-soluble pen and mark off the measurements. I recommend having these types of rulers that they use for quilting typically, because they have nice straight edges on it, and you're more likely to get a more accurate measurement than you would with a just a, oh, I'm losing my words tonight, tape measure, because tape measures can move around on you a lot. Tape measures are, I would recommend to use them more on when you're measuring somebody for clothes that you're going to be making, because you need a flexible thing to do that as far as measuring clothing. But on things like this where you need really precise measurements as far as the corners and so forth, these types of rulers are really great. Alright, so now that I've got a solid piece cut out, now I have chosen this print for the other side. So I'm going to do it from the wrong side. Turn it over. And I'm not going to go ahead and lay those on top of there. I'm going to do this separately here. So I'm not going to, don't ever believe that the edge of your fabric is going to be straight. So always make sure you measure it out and cut it to the size you need. And I need 9 by 7, and it looks like 9 comes up to here, and that's the 9's over here. That's not going to get everything for me. And the bottom here is frayed. So I'm going to have to go about this a different direction to make sure I've got enough fabric. Because I need 9 by 7. And I need at least 1 inch wider than this ruler because it's only 6 inches. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get close, because I'm going to get rid of this piece here that's not going to be helpful to hang on to, because it's too small to really be useful in any other projects. So I'm kind of measuring this off to the side really close to this. I've got that almost to the top, but I'm leaving a little bit of room because the top of that fabric is kind of frayed, so I don't want to get too... I'm not going to use that part. I'm going to cut that part off. So, and, oh wait, darn it, I forgot this is 6 inches across and I need 7. I just messed that up. I get so used to using, I use this particular one when I'm making face masks, and I've been making a whole bunch of them. And they're 9 by 6, and so I had that in my head, so I just messed up my piece of fabric. But I've got more, so that's okay. I will just cut it out from this side. Luckily this is scrap fabric. It's just left over from other projects that we've made in the past. Okay, so I'm going to definitely measure 7 across here. Let's see. I'm going to take, and I'm going to measure about 8 inches to the edge here, because I want to have 7. I want to make sure kind of to have a straight edge to start with. So that's my edge I'm going to be working with. And I need it 9. Okay. So just going to go ahead and cut. Well, actually, I'm just going to cut off to the end here to get that piece of fabric out of the way. And then I've got 1 straight edge here, and then I need it to measure 7 across here. I need to be using the mat that's underneath my fabric too to help me. So I'm going to line it up with that too to make sure it's straight. And I'm just going to double check this again, make sure 9. Okay, yeah, if I'm down here, that's going to be plenty. So I'm going to line up with this line here. Once we get these pieces cut, we'll be ready to go. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So definitely gotta make sure it doesn't move on you. It's still where it's supposed to be. Sometimes it will shift on you very slightly. But if you have if you do it a little bigger than it's supposed to be, that's always better than too small. Yep, it shifted just a tiny bit. Okay. Smooth it out this way to make sure. I get in too big of a hurry sometimes when I'm doing, well, it's shifted again at the top. I want it to be as close as possible. Doing it at an angle is always challenging. Okay, I think that's going to be close enough. So we're just going to cut that off the edge there, which sometimes little bitty strings will get hung up. Alright, so the top is the only thing I need to straighten out now. So I'm going to line these up with all of these lines. And then I need it to be 9 inches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it should be here for my 9 inches. But I'm going to double check again to make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. And got all my lines lined up. Make sure it looks good on this side. Oh, Joanne, or John, I'm sorry. Hey, how are you doing? It's always kind of hard when people's names pop up on here. I wonder, I'm like, are you still here, or were you here a minute ago and I just now noticed? Because it says that someone's watching, but then they could always leave and not be watching anymore. Okay, let's make sure I didn't mess this up. Okay, so that's the same size also. Alright, so I've got my back piece, which is the solid red. I've got my insulation for the inside, and like I keep saying, when you do this on yours, get 2 pieces of this insulation. I unfortunately don't have enough to have 2 pieces, so I'm doing it with just 1 piece, which is not recommended. If you really want to have a good one that you can actually pull things out of the oven and not get burned. This might be just fine for whenever you've pulled a cookie sheet out and you want to lay it on the counter. This would probably be okay to have on the counter to set that on. But I would not use it with 1 piece of this insulation for pulling something out of a hot oven. Okay, so we're laying these on top of each other. And if you did have your second piece of insulation, you would just have them on top of each other in the middle. You would have your solid color on the back and your print on the front. And what I'm going to do is get a marker, a water soluble marker, and what we're going to do, or what I'm going to do, is show you, we're going to mark where we're going to be sewing, and we're going to be doing like diagonals. We're also going to be using some bias tape for the edges. So whenever we're doing the diagonals, I want it to be, I have it on top of my measuring thing here, so I can also line this up with lines that are on this back board here to measure out where I want them. So I'm going to do, the pattern called for making lines like 1 inch apart, but I liked it having 2 inches apart. So I'm going to do this in 2 inch increments. So that's my first line, and then I'm going to line up my 2 inch mark with the line that I already made. And that's, I know it's going to be really hard for you to see, but there's a 2 here and a 2 here. That's where my line, that other line that I drew just a moment ago. So I'm going to draw this line here, and that's, you may be able to see that now. That's my first line and that's my second line. I've got 2 inches apart from them. And so I'm going to move my 2 inch mark on top of that next line that I drew before I do the next one. So that way I've got 2 inches between these. So I'm going to go back the other direction and do 2 inches. I'm just laying this line that marks the 2 inch place on top of the line that I drew to help me, or that I've drawn on there. And then I'm going to do that again on this one. I'm going to line it up. That's why I like these so much. They you can do this. It's very versatile as far as being able to do a bunch of things like this. Alright, so I got my lines for this direction, but you also have to go the opposite direction. So I'm going to start with my middle line first. It's better to start with your middle line first whenever you're marking it. That way you get better spacing. And so I've lined the edge of this up with the 1 inch and the 1 inch on that side there. Alright, so that's how I got my center kind of. I was following what the person did in the directions that I'm, the pattern that I'm following. And so I'm just doing 2 inches apart again. And if you ever mark it wrong, you can always just take the lines off with some water and remark it. Alright, so then I got my marks for that. I'm going to go back this direction to get my lines for this way. Oh, my fabric moved on me, so it did some funny things there. Alright, so I got one more line to do. Let me line that up. And then there we go. So now I've got all my lines that I'm going to, I don't think y'all could probably see those very good because of the camera, but let me show you the one that I made earlier as the example, and you can kind of see the blue still from, I washed this yet, but that's how you do your lines on there. I like that kind of crisscross look like that. You can do different ones, but that's the way I decided to do mine. And the person that I'm following their pattern, they did 1 inch instead of 2 inches. So it just depends on how you'd like to do that. Now I'm going to be sewing this, and I want everything to kind of stay in place. And I really don't want to use pins on this, so I'm going to use clips to hold my fabric pieces together in place. I just don't want to poke holes in this insulation that I have, so that's why I'm using clips. I don't know that it makes a difference or not if you do that, but I just want to be on the safe side because it's got this metallic like stuff that keeps it warm or keeps you from getting burned, and so I just didn't want to poke any holes in it with the pins to pin this in place while but I guess I'm going to be poking holes in it with sewing it, so I guess that really doesn't matter. I think my fabric shifted before I started pinning it, because I started pinning the bottom and it wasn't quite covering or lining up on my bottom. Let's see. I guess it's not a huge deal if you get everything perfectly lined up, but the better you can do, the less problems you'll have when you're doing your bias tape. So I'm going to see if this works a little bit better for me. You want it smoothed out as the best as possible. And I'm going to be using a walking foot for, it keeps shifting on me. Let's see if I can, it's like one end will have more fabric than the other end. I don't like that. But I guess I could always cut it again. I didn't do this on my other one and I didn't worry about it. I guess I shouldn't worry too much about it. I didn't even pin it in place or anything. I just sewed it together. So, and it worked out just fine. So maybe I'm worrying a little too much about it this time. Okay. I thought I would try to show you the proper way of doing it instead of the shortcut ways that I do it. That isn't necessarily the best way to do it, since I get in a hurry on doing my stuff sometimes. Okay, I'm trying to avoid where I'm going to be sewing as far as where I'm putting my clips, because I'll have to move those anyway as I'm sewing. Let's see, and I want to not move around as much as possible. Okay, I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew down these lines. And this is how you do stuff whenever you're quilting too, as far as the directions we're going to be sewing it and so forth. Alright, so hopefully this won't take a long time to sew. And this will be probably the most sewing we're going to be doing, or I'm going to be showing you. Alright. Try to get positioned where you can see. Alright. And I'm going to use white thread on mine. I'm trying to get scooted up here with it. Getting close enough. Alright, where's that? Because I want white thread on the top because it's going to be seen, and I just think that would look better if I had white. When I do my bias tape that's green, I'm going to switch to green thread. Alright, I've got too many things up here. I'm going to move that out of the way. Alright, so I'm going to start on one of these corners where I have the lines drawn, and that's going to be in the way, so I'm going to take it out of the way. And you're going to line this up. Let's see, I need to pull my threads to the side here. Alright, and I'm going to start a little ways in and try to get that lined up straight. Okay, and so we're going to just be doing some straight stitching, and you want to make sure that you have a long stitch length set. Whenever you're doing something, when it's bulky type things, it's always better to have a long stitch length. Let's see. So that's what, let's see. Try to make sure that this is as much in the center as possible. Alright, so I'm going to start with it in the fabric. I'm going to back up a few stitches here because I'm not onto the edge. Alright, to reinforce my stitches. And you're just going to sew straight on that line that you drew. Or as straight as you possibly can. And I'm going to move that out of the way, and then I'm going to shift this over a little bit. And I'm going to back up just, well, I'm going to go forward just one more before I back it. Alright, and then I'm going to sew off the edge. Alright, so that's one. And I'm just going to use my scissors. I'll cut all my threads here in a minute. Alright, so I went straight across. And what you want to do is you want to turn your fabric to sew the next line. I know that sounds kind of weird, but that's how you should do it whenever you're actually quilting too, is to sew from the other direction the next time. It's from the same edge, more or less, just the opposite edge. But as far as fabric shifting and stuff, it's a good way to do it. One more. I didn't want to do two more. I went off my fabric. Trying to get my shoe on the pedal there. Okay, and I'm going to do a little backing up. And then sew off the edge. There we go. Pull that off and cut. Alright, and so I'm going to turn it the other direction. And I'm going to come back across. It's going to look like I'm almost doing the same side again, but I've turned it around. And starting there, and I'm going to back up. Okay, that might hit that, so let me move that out of the way just in case. And most of these are probably not going to be needed here pretty soon as far as the little clips holding the fabric in place, so. Okay. Because these lines we've already done is kind of holding a lot of it in place. Okay. So now I'm turning it again. I'm going to have lots of threads to cut here when I get done. I move that one out of the way. And so this is going to be a much shorter line than the other ones because this is on the very edge. And I think I might need to move that out of the way too. And back up a little bit. Most of the backing up, you don't have to back up a whole lot because we're going to be putting bias tape and we're going to be sewing on the edges anyway, so it's going to get reinforced from that, from your bias tape. So, alright, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that one too. You always want to make sure that you know where your threads are at to make sure that you haven't lost any. Okay. Okay. So now I've done those directions. I'll show you real quick. What we've been doing is the I need a little more space to be able to see this. The diagonals from this direction, the long ways. Now we're going to turn it and do the diagonals from this side. And we're going to start in the middle and do, like, either do this one and then turn and do this direction, and then we'll turn and we'll do this one and then turn and do that. And that's kind of what you do with quilting. You always turn and sew from the other direction when you're quilting. Alright, so I'm going to start. I redid that line one time whenever I was drawing it, and I need to decide which one is the proper one. I think it's the darker one that I did, so I'm going to go with that. So I'm going to turn and come from this direction on this one. And I got lots of little threads. Okay, where is my main threads? There they are. Make sure I know where they are. I'm going to back up. I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of that one. One more. And I'm afraid that's going to get hit, so I'm going to move that out of the way. Alright. Almost got all of these. I'm going to turn my fabric again, and I'm going to have to cut all these threads out of the way here pretty soon. Okay. think. I probably should have been cutting all my threads as I went so it wouldn't be so messy looking. Alrighty, and it looks like I've got 2 short corners left, and then I will be done with this portion, if I can find my threads again. Okay, line that up, except it's not as far over as I'd like. There we go. Back up, and go forward. And back up. Okay, so there's that one, and then I'll get my other corner. Make sure I know where, oh, they went all the way over there. Okay, so let's line that up. Back up a little bit, and I'm going to be trimming this up a little bit too once we get done. Alright, besides trimming the threads off, let's see. Alright, so I'm going to need those clips again in a minute. Alright, so I'm going to inspect this just to make sure that I've got lines. Some of that little silver stuff came through. And make sure that I went over all of my lines, and it looks like I did. So now I just want to make sure that I get rid of all of my threads on top and on bottom. Just because there's going to be a lot of them. Okay. Alright, you can see the lines a little bit better from the back side because it's the white's a contrast to the red there. And I think I might even decide to trim up the edges of my fabric a little bit, because it does look like I did have some shifting going on my fabric, so I want to keep it as straight as possible. Some of my, because I didn't cut my threads off as I went, some of them got underneath what I was sewing, but not a big deal, they'll come loose. Let's see here. Got some stray fabric there. Let's see. Okay, well. There's another one I missed. Okay. I got a little bit of the fabric, but that's okay. I was being in a hurry there. Okay, so making sure. Yep, I got them some threads on the front too. Okay, and one more thread I missed. Alright, so throw all those away. And I'm gonna kinda, nope, there's another one. The white, of course, blends in with anything that's kind of white. Okay, so now that I've got all of those, I'm just kind of double checking my work to make sure everything looks okay, and I found some more threads that I missed. So this edge is not a big deal as far as it sticking out further, because the bias tape is going to go over that anyway, so that's not going to matter. Alright, I'm going to go with my green bias tape, and I've got some clips, and I'm going to do this one a little bit different from last time because when I followed the directions of the pattern that I'm following, I wasn't real happy with this ending up mostly on the left side because she had you start with your bias tape really far over here. And then when that may not have mattered as much. It's just that this piece, how long of a piece she had you leave, was only like 5 inches, and then it ended up being pretty short, and so I had to curl it over here where it wasn't in the center. So I'm going to leave a longer piece off the edge to make sure that that doesn't happen again. So I'm going to do it a little bit different than I did last time. And another thing we're going to be doing, I'm going to be changing the thread out because I want this green to be matching this. But in order to have curved edges, you need to draw in some curved corners. So I'm going to use one of these spools here to do my curves for my corners. So I'm going to take this and put this on the corner of it. It's going to be really hard to be able to show this to you since, let's see, I'll point it from this direction. And this is what she did, but I think a better one would be a bigger spool of thread. Let's see. I've got a bigger one. I guess it's really not going to be any difference, is it? That's how she did hers, but okay, well, I'll try it. I did it differently last time. I had a curved edge of something that I used instead, but this is, you're not going to see a whole lot of this because it's so small. I hope I end up with this nice curved edge. And that fabric came over a little bit, didn't it? So that's going to be a little bit, I'm going to cut it from this edge since that fabric came over too far. I'm going to cut it here. I think I'll do it on this side. It'll be easier to see. The pattern side, it just makes it more difficult. Okay, that'll be good enough. Okay, and I'm going to get my scissors and cut my corners. It's actually not going to be that rounded, is it? I guess because it's such a small curve there. And I'm probably going to have to, that one's a little more curved, cut that excess fabric off too. Okay. And we're almost done with this, really. I'm trying to hold this in front of the camera to better so you can see. Oh, I didn't get the fabric underneath. Okay. It's making it a little more difficult for me to see, but that's okay. Alright, so we cut those, and I'm going to go ahead and trim off that excess fabric that it shifted where I had more just sticking out, a lot more sticking out on that side. So I'm just going to trim that. Okay. That should be, yeah, I guess that's what happened was it shifted. Even though I used the clips, it went and shifted that direction. That's not going to be, like I said, a big deal because the bias tape will cover that up. Alright, since we got the corners done, now we're going to be pinning which I'm going to be clipping instead of pinning my bias tape. I'm going to go ahead and swap to my green thread on my machine and have that ready. Because I don't want to use white, because whenever we're doing the top stitches, it's going to be visible at the end there. So I'm going to just go ahead and get swapped out now. So we'll take the white off of the machine and load it up with the green. Oops. Okay, I'm going to have to lower that foot to be able to put that in the eye there. I have a threader, but it doesn't work with the walking foot in place there. Okay. Get my green thread in there. And then I'm going to grab that, pull that up. Alright, so now we're ready with the green thread. Alright. So, okay, so now we're going to take this bias tape, and she said to pin your binding at the top of the pad just to the left of the middle. And, okay. So, I think that's the wrong corner. Because you want your bias tape on the shorter side. Let's see. I always have to really look at this to figure out if I'm doing this right. Because the shorter side is the side that you want to sew down. Okay, so whenever we're going to sew this part first, and then it's going to flip over to the other side, and then we're going to do like a top stitch to catch the back of that. So we need to start pinning this, or I'm just going to use clips just because. And she said to start on this edge here. And I don't know that I like starting. Oh well, that'll be fine. I'll turn this a little bit more so you can see what I'm doing. But you can use pins, which actually the pins might be better because it will keep. I notice it's folding. So I'm going to go ahead and swap to my pins because you don't want it folding over on you. So that makes a lot more sense. So what you're doing is you're taking your bias tape and you're lining it up with the top edge of your fabric, and you're pinning it in place. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sewing down this fold of your bias tape. And so this will take just a little bit at a time, and you want to keep it as straight as possible on your corners. So you might have to pin and then turn. I think I'm going to pin it probably more on the corners than I do anywhere else because of it turning. So you want to keep it lined up with your corners too. So now that I've got it turned, and try to keep it lined up with my fabric. You won't have to pin it quite as often on the straight edges as you do on the curved. At least space it out by an inch on the straighter edges, because you really don't have to pin it as much there as you do on the curved ones. until I get to right here where it's going to curve and pin it. And then right at the other curve there, I'm going to also pin it again. I know it looks a little strange there, but we'll have to shift this some more to keep it straight. Is that another thread that I didn't cut earlier? Sure did have a lot of those, didn't I? I think my fabric too is also doing stuff. Alright, so we're going to keep pinning this in place. I'll be glad when we start being able to have classes inside the library again. I miss being able to sit back and let the students do their projects, and I'll just, you know, step in and help when needed. And because I know I learn a lot better by just doing it instead of watching people. I mean, sure, you need to watch people the first time, but you get to learn more by making mistakes, doing it yourself. I know sometimes people would get upset when they make mistakes in the class, but I'm like, you're not going to make that mistake again next time because you learn from it whenever you do it. And the next time you do another project that's similar to that, you'll remember what happened and how to avoid doing it again. Let's see, hopefully I won't have to run out of these pins here. I don't want to, but I might have enough. Let's see here. Oh, hey Terry, I don't know if you're still watching or not, but it's popped up. I wish it had a little timestamp saying when you started watching, but hey, if you're there, thanks for watching. Okay, here, and now I'm coming around the corner. Now, I missed out on remembering to tell you to get you supplies to see if you wanted to do this project tonight. I'm sorry about that. I didn't realize that till today at work, and I went, oh no. She usually likes to do the sewing things. Okay, so I've made it back around to this one. So I need to straighten it out with that. So I'm going to pin it right next to where the other one begins. Okay, so space this out a little bit. And like I said, she said to cut this off. And I don't agree with this because I didn't have enough bias tape when I did it. But she said to cut it off about 5 inches, which would be about here. Mine wasn't long enough. So I'm going to just leave, since I've got only this much left. I'm just going to leave that there. And then when I get done, I can figure out how much I need to cut off. It'll be better to do it that way, so I won't make any mistakes. So now I'm just going to start sewing here on the edge and go all the way around my edge until I get back over here, and then I'll stop. So that's where the two meet. So I like to double check and I said, okay, to sew that around, and then we'll pin the other stuff down. Okay, so let's go around the edges. I'm going to try to get untangled from these wires so I won't move things around so much anymore, because I kept getting tangled last time. So let's see if I can scoot in here without banging into the camera. That always makes me mad when that happens. Okay, so and like I was saying earlier, I've got a walking foot on the machine. Anytime you're doing any bulky kind of sewing where you've got lots of fabric, it's a good idea to use a walking foot. Alright, so I might have to take this last pin out that I pinned, and I'll have to pin it back later. because that's where my starting point is, and that's holding the fabric in the way of where I want to start. So I'm going to go ahead and move it and find my green threads here, and we want to start right about here and take my first pin away, and you're just going to be sewing down that little indentation in the fabric. I call it a line, but it's where the fold is. So I'm going to back up first to put that down good. Okay. I'm having trouble actually seeing that. And I have so much light here, I'm like, how do I not be able to see? Oh well. I can see it okay, but I feel like I'm going to go see the eye doctor next month, and I really do think I need my prescription fixed. Small stuff when I'm sewing and so forth causes some problems. Okay, and this is where it gets a little tricky. You don't want to sew over the folds. So what I do is when I get to the edges here, I run this manually until I get too close to where the fold is. Then I will take my pin out. I will open this up a little bit. Let's see. Because you do not want to sew the fold part. Let me take some of that out. You want the fabric to lay as flat as possible, which I'm having to straighten it a little bit as I go. Oops, I shouldn't have done that. I was so concerned about my fabric not staying flat. You should never, actually, when the needle is not in the fabric, is not a good time to lift the foot. So we're going to try to straighten that out as much as possible, which I can't see the fold hardly anymore, which is bothering me. Okay. Okay, that's a little bit better. Okay. And is that all still lined up the way it's supposed to be? The best we can. The corners are going to be the hardest part. I got dangerously close to that one, but I was comfortable with that. Alright, so one more, and then I got a fold in there that I want to straighten out, which I didn't have as much problem with. I guess I gave myself a bigger curve on the other one. It just didn't seem to have as much of an issue with it as this one. I do not want wrinkles. There we go. There's another wrinkle that's trying to appear. Keep it straight. Okay, I think I got it past the danger zone there. Except I've noticed that now my fabric is bunching a little bit. But that's all right. I think I'm going to just kind of go with the flow here and just make sure that everything is lined up like it's supposed to be. And kind of do it the way I've been doing it. I'm going to take my pen out of there and just make sure it stays straight. Actually, I'm gonna pull that forward and put the foot down and come down at least one more so I can do my little turn a little bit easier with not too much. There we go. I wonder how this is going to turn out. The other one turned out okay, but I'm doing this a little bit different. Coming around where my straight place is going to be. Well, I'm going to do a little more. Oops. Always got to make sure you got that foot. I want to do a slight shift there. And then more straight. And then I should be able to straighten it out. There we go. That's the one thing about reading directions. They don't tell you how to handle these situations when you're coming around curves. How to keep your fabric from bunching up. Kind of have to play with it to see how it's going to work. I'm just going to take all these pins out. And just come up to my corner here. And then do a little bit of shifting. I might have to do a little more, one more stitch, and then do a little bit of shifting. I just want to turn just a tiny bit. I just got to stay with that straight line though. Alright. Let's do one more. And one more. Now I think I might be able to straighten it out. There we go. Okay, so now I'm back to where I started originally. So I'm just going to sew up to that point. That's another thing they didn't explain in the directions on how far you're supposed to go there. Alright, and I reinforced it by backing up. So now I'm going to take this out. And what I'm going to be doing this time, I will cut my excess threads off here. And we're going to be turning this and they said on the corners you might have to cut some excess, but I'm going to look and see how bunched up this is going to look before I decide to cut that, which it is kind of sticking out quite a bit, so we'll inspect it here in a minute. You want it to go in there, but not stick out too far. Because you do want it to lay a little bit flat. What I might have to do, instead of cutting it, I might clip it. That might actually work better. Because I'm looking at this, so I'm turning it and looking to see what it looks like. It might be best just to do a little clip on the corner. So I'm going to do a little bitty notch and a little bitty notch and over here, and I'm going to check and see if that helps. Let's see, with it bunching up. Let's see. Did a little bit. Yeah, that lays down. Yeah, just doing those little divots actually helped it lay down quite a bit. So I think the corners that look like they're not going to lay flat, just cut some little divots out, which this corner is going to turn up too. So I'm going to cut some divots into this corner also. I used my pinking shears on my corners, or my, on the last one, and it made the corners a little too small. And it looked a little funny. I didn't like the way it ended up looking. So this might be a better way. Here, I'll show you better. That's kind of how I clipped it. Let's see if this looks okay. If it lays down flat. And if it still doesn't lay down flat, I might have to cut some excess fabric, which it seems to be doing okay too. So I'm gonna go with that. This one doesn't seem to be turning inwards like the other ones did. So there's, like this one, these top two don't seem to be having the issue that the other ones had. So I'm trying to remember how she had me do this last time. Actually, she didn't explain this part, so I had to guess last time. Actually, this is going to go over that. So I came over a little too far with this stitch. So I'm going to seam rip that back a little bit. Sometimes the directions aren't the best. So I'm going to take my little stitches, the last couple, out of there, which I back stitched, so it's going to be kind of tough to get that loose. There we go. Just loose enough for that, because I want it to go over the top of this one. Except my corner keeps puckering outwards. Alright, so I may... I wonder, I thought I sewed over that, so why was that a problem? That's weird. I guess I did right and I didn't realize it. Yeah, that should not have been a problem, because this is going to be folding over the top of this one. Okay, well I guess I need to go back and fix that, huh? Because I'm going to be doing some top stitching, but that's going to do some shifting and some moving. Oh, no, I did do it wrong. Okay. So now that I've folded the other one over. Okay. Yeah, I'll fix that real quick. So this is just right where I want to make sure that they lay on top of each other. And if you have trouble getting it under there, just lift up the foot some more and you should be able to. Okay. So I want this to line up with this other one. Okay. Ooh, went faster than I thought it was going to. And just come a couple of stitches past that, just to make sure, and then I'll back up. Alright, that should be good. Alright. So, let's get rid of these excess threads. Oh, I have a puppy dog jigging on me. You're running away. You're making it look like I'm lying. Hey, little Lucy. You checking on me? I'm just still sewing. Alright. So, now when we fold... She's up here checking again. Now when we fold it over, it's overlapping and stuff. Okay, so now I want to look at my corners again to make sure. I might have to do some divots on that one too, because it looks like it might be puckering too. Let's see. Yeah, I think I need to. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on this one too. Let's do a couple of little pieces out of that. Except I didn't cut that good enough that it's going to come loose. Let's see if I did it this time. There we go. Alright, so that should take some of the bulk out of that corner. It should lay a little more flat. This corner seems to be doing okay. So now what we're going to be focusing on is making sure that this is pulled over all the way. And we're going to start sewing here first. So I'm going to put clips on this time, which this is going over further than that. Well, I don't need to clip it too close to the edge because that's where I'm going to start sewing. Okay, so we just want to make sure that the flap stays down. And you want to make sure that it stays nice and flat. I like the clips rather than the pins for this part because it helps lay everything flat for you. I might be better off putting this more around the edges. Let's see, because the corners are the hardest part. That one might have to get kind of folded. Yeah, because that's not going to lay flat. Let's see. We can force that out a little bit. Come on. Gradual. It'll help. Well, we just want to hold it in place. I think as far as the sewing machine, it'll help. It kind of smoothed out my other one when I was doing that one. So I think the same will happen on this one, which I should be putting my clips the opposite direction because I'm going to be sewing on the other side. It's easier to pull them off that way. So, because we're going to be sewing on the front side. Because the back side, this piece flips over further than the front side, and that's the way you want it to do when you're sewing it, because you don't want the short side on the opposite side. Okay. I find that laying that flat kind of helps a little bit with the clipping. I don't know why I'm trying to smooth this out while I'm doing this. Like I said, it'll kind of smooth out for you once you start sewing it. I'm such a perfectionist about stuff, sometimes it messes me up on stuff. Trying to get it just so. That corner. I want it to stick out further. Well, I can't flatten that corner out real good just yet because I'm going to start sewing over there and that'll be in the way if I do that. So, let's go over to the sewing machine. See if I can get positioned here correctly. And now the green thread will look pretty good because it will be my top stitch that I'm going to be doing. Alright, so and we're going to start right in front of where those two joined, and I'll come over it again whenever I come back around, but it'll have that other piece on top. So we're just going to do a straight stitching here. And you're going to want to be as close to the edge of the fabric here whenever you're sewing. Let's see, where's my little box of these? Let me move some things around so I can throw them in there easily. Maybe. We'll try. I need to get closer to the sewing machine, but these legs on this chair I'm sitting on keeps hitting the tripod for the camera. Let's see. There we go. I think I got that better. And this is where you might want to do a little bit of manual sewing. It gets a little tricky on the corners when you have subtle turns. Till you get straight again. Which I'm not quite straight. Trying to sew off there on the edge. small turn, and a small turn. Oops. Oh, this whole thing is hitting everything. This corner's kind of bulky. This one didn't quite lay down as much as the other ones. And I trimmed it down, but oh gosh. Yep, I messed up. I don't like how, really don't like how this is looking. Because my corner got really, really small. It didn't look that way. I should have looked at it from the front side after I had pinned it. But I'm already sewing, so I'm not going to worry about it. Probably had some more straightening to do. I did that with the other ones. I should have done it with this one. Okay, so now it's going to be a little more difficult to do. I'm going to cut these little threads off, because we're going to go back over that spot that we sewed at the beginning. And I need everything to lay down on top where it's supposed to be. So I might have to do a little bit of clipping to hold things in place when I come around the corner, which I might not have enough room to do that. Let's see if that will help. Because this corner got kind of small and turned too. I guess the little clip I did didn't work as well as using the what are they called? The pinking shears on my other one. But she didn't put any suggestions about that on the pattern, so alright, so we're getting close to where we started, which I might just walk it forward since I'm so close to make sure I don't go past that. Well, whenever I go past the point, I want to get to the point of where I started, and then we're going to be sewing like off the project. So I'm going to get right there where I started. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to straighten this piece of bias tape out, and we're going to sew on the edge of it all the way. Let's see, I'm going to trim some of this off because I know I won't need all of this. I'm going to leave a longer piece than I did on that last one, but it's still a little too long. But I'm going to sew all the way down the edge of this bias tape. So we want to make, oops, I didn't have the pressure foot down. So you want to line that up with the bias tape, because you're going to sew off the project. but you're going to be still on the bias tape, but you're going to stay close to the edge. Let's see, I'm getting close to the end. Okay. All right, so we got that part done, and we're practically done. We only have one more part, tiny little piece to do. All right, so I'm going to cut that off the edge there. Okay, move that back out of the way. All right, so with this piece, I still followed her directions like I told myself not to. I don't know why she wants you on this corner when you start, because you need to go towards the middle when you come off of it. Because then you turn it, doesn't matter how long this is, it's still going to be on the corner. I like mine to be in the middle, so I guess it just depends on where you want your little ribbon to be. At least my ribbon's going to be bigger this time than it was last time. It was a little too small last time. But, so I don't follow her directions on that part. Keep going towards the middle if that's where you want your tie to be. If you want it on the edge, then do it on the edge. But I think what I'm going to do is, after the video's over, over with, I'm going to rip this out and sew it up here. But really the last part is turning it like this and just getting your sewing machine and then sewing over that piece here to tack it down and then cutting off the excess. So that's the very last part of that. But I'm going to go back and fix it because I don't like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rip the stitching back to here, and then I'm going to lay it down to where I come off at this point right here, so it'll be in the center. You think I would have learned from doing it the first time and it not quite turning out the way I liked it. But this one looks kind of Christmassy actually, because I used kind of Christmas fabric, but on one side anyway. But anyway, that's that project. I don't have an example. Well, I have a picture of next week's project. It's going to be another sewing project. It's a reusable coffee sleeve, and you just need some fabric, and you don't use the Insel Bright stuff that we used on this one, but you use medium weight fusible fleece for the inside of it. So you only need 2 pieces of fabric and the little insulation piece, and then these are like rubber bands that you have put your hair up with, and then just a pretty big like button to wrap it around. And these are good for any kind of coffee cups that don't have a handle on it, or because I've got some ceramic ones that I bought that don't have a handle, that had a rubber little piece that you put around it to keep your hand from getting burned holding it. But this is like a little fabric one that you can make for it, or you can make it for like that. It looks like they have that on a Starbucks coffee cup. So it's kind of cute, and you can it's neat because you can actually change the design up a little bit if you want to, and make it for a bigger coffee cup if you want to, or you know, it's got some. I like it because you can make some slight changes to it and do other things with it if you want to. But that's next week, and then after that, I'm thinking of doing the last Thursday, I believe. I'll be doing probably a paint along, probably like a spring kind of paint along. But I did a different painting that I was trying, and it for it, and it took too long to paint it to do a class. So I've changed my mind, and I'm coming up with a different paint along for that instead. Alright, that's it for tonight. You can start calling tomorrow to sign up for supplies for the reusable coffee sleeve for next week if you'd like to get supplies for that. And that's it for tonight. I'll see you next week. Bye.